Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone.
But you've possibly found the best kept secret in business. He's handsome. He's loud. He's got some tattoos. He'll tell you as it is and only wears a suit at a wedding or a funeral. No jargon, no overcomplicated 300-stage program. Just upfront, honest, proven ideas, thoughts, and strategies
That actually
work. So here's your host, the best kept business secret probably anywhere.
Ladies and gentlemen,
This is Marc Ford.
Hello and welcome to your Best Kept Business Secret podcast with me, your host, Marc Ford, your Best Kept Business Secret. Hope you're well. This podcast is, well, it's ridiculously topical right now. Today's podcast is business lessons from a £50 video. We talk to Phil Beastall. Phil has been all over the news in the last few weeks. He made a video 4 years ago for the equivalent of 50 quid. And it has been viewed almost as many times as the current John Lewis advert. He's been all over the press, all over the TV, all over the radio. And yes, I bagged an interview with him. He's taken some time out of his very, very busy schedule to have a chat with us about the business lessons that you should learn from making your own video. Genuinely, there are some great knowledge bombs in here. So I'd grab a pen, grab a piece of paper and listen to what this chap has got to say. So joining me now is Phil, who has quite simply become an overnight sensation, but it's not really an overnight sensation. And I'm sure he's going to tell you a little bit more about how you become an overnight sensation, given several years. Thank you so much for doing this, Phil. It's really appreciated.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Great stuff. Mate, so obviously let's get down to the nitty-gritty of this video that has just gone nuts.
Yeah.
When did you first find out that just, you know, all of a sudden it's gone from several thousand views to several million views?
To be honest, we were monitoring it really closely because when I first posted it, it was a Sunday morning. I put it up on the Tewkesbury notice board, local community, which is where I live. And I got a bit of traction, and we had a few thousand views, and it was doing all right. And I was quite pleased about that. And then it just started to creep up very slowly, and then we hit 10,000, then we hit 20. And I remember I joked with my partner. I think I went to bed at night and I said, wow, imagine if we woke up in the morning and it was 50,000. And then I did wake up, but it was 60,000. And then that curve of growth just started to speed up. And I think by day 2 and 3, we were heading into the hundreds of thousands and towards 1 million.
Wow. What kind of feeling does that give you? Because everybody wants something that goes viral, but sort of like, what kind of, were you shocked? Were you stunned? What did you just suddenly thought, this is it? This is the big time? What was going through your mind?
It's weird. I've gone through some phases, really. So when it started kicking off, because it is kind of the dream, really, for any video producer or filmmaker to create something that goes viral. So when it started to pick up, I was I didn't quite believe it, but equally I was thinking, oh my God, is this actually going viral? And then it started to speed up, and I don't know, I just never really felt real, and I feel like it's happening to somebody else. It's such a bizarre way to see it, like the fact that people have seen my film on the opposite side of the globe, and not only have they seen it, they've enjoyed it so much that they can't help but share it and private message me. I just feel privileged.
Wow. It is. We live in such a fantastic age right now where, you know, you can literally connect with anybody at any part of the world. It's just astounding. Run us through the idea behind the film. Why, you know, how much it cost you, sort of like where the idea came from, because it's such a great story.
Thank you. So I studied film production at university, but after I graduated, I fell into a corporate video production role. So I worked for an agency for about 5 years. And then when I left there back in 2012, I always had this idea that I was going to start exploring my creativity again a little bit more, because I had that freedom. And then in 2014, I was just desperate to make a Christmas film. I'd done one I think it was 2 years prior actually with my son. And for me, there's just something about Christmas, because it's so magical. I just think it lends itself to telling stories. So I was just out on a run on a Sunday afternoon. I was just thinking about concepts, and then just suddenly this idea came to me. And I raced home to my partner and told her about it. And I just knew straight away that this was a story that I really wanted to share. And so within a couple of days, we were filming it. But it was because the guy that's in it, Chris, is a friend of mine, and we worked together on corporate productions. And because he's got an actor background, we just thought, should we just make it? And for me, I'm on a bit of a mission at the moment, or have been anyway, to see how much I can achieve of next to no budget with tiny crews. And I think I've heard stories of people that do big productions, and there's people just stood around doing nothing. Yeah. And I mean, that's a lot of money to be wasted. So it does intrigue me as to what can be achieved off a tiny budget.
And if anything, you're now living proof of what can be achieved.
Yeah, and what I'm pleased about it is that, because I think what I've noticed, and I've actually been affected a little bit by this, is that there's some great content coming out online, but it's very much reliant on editing, which is an art form in itself. But I've found that camera operating has kind of and storytelling has lost its way a little bit, and there's a lot of reliance on effects that can be achieved in post. It's the classic let's fix it in post thing. Yeah. Whereas I'm much more traditional, and I like to come in with a story. So actually, because I filmed it 4 years ago, I've progressed since then, but there's no layers of production on top. It is really simple and just about story, so for that to take off has been amazing for me.
Well, you see, that's really interesting, because that's why I sort of alluded to a little bit earlier, is obviously, you're an overnight sensation 4 years later, which, from a business point of view, there is no such thing as an overnight sensation. It normally means that there's several hard yards gone into it. But unless you'd actually, unless you'd said, or unless it come out that it was 4 years ago, actually people wouldn't know that it had been filmed 4 years ago. It's quite timeless in its storytelling, isn't it?
It is, and it just goes to show as well that, as you say, people wouldn't realise. And I've got this kind of ratio when I'm doing every type of job, really, is that you kind of, as a filmmaker, you want your work to hit 100%, and that there's many areas in which you can reach 100%, and one of them might be production value and things like camera work, and you might have crane shots in there, but actually your audience probably only notices about 80% of it. So that 20% on top tends to get unnoticed. And so in a business sense, I've had to really be sensible, because I used to put my heart and soul into everything, and I still do in terms of energy, but it's sometimes that 20% kind of gets lost. Mm-hmm. So and I think what we're noticing here is that I could have shot this on a much better camera. I could have had a bigger crew, and we could have done so much more. But actually, would that have been noticed? And how much value are we really getting out of that top 20%? Whereas the bulk of the 80%, which is the emotional content and the story, is really what resonates with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. It's the story. I mean, the only thing that I jokingly said is that I really want a Walkman for Christmas. But I'm a kid of the 80s. I remember Walkmans so fondly. So it's interesting, because you've obviously come from that sort of like the corporate video background, and I talk in workshops, and I'm doing several in 2019 where I'm sort of encouraging businesses to reflect their personality, to reflect who they are, what they're about through video. I'm seeing a lot of bad stuff out there, including some career enders, where people basically I call them career enders. They basically just go on and rant for 3 minutes, about how lucky they are and how everybody else wishes they were them, which are proper career enders. But I'm always encouraging people to tell a story. So obviously you've seen both sides of the coin. You're doing it for yourself, telling your own kind of stories, but you obviously you've seen the corporate side of things where they're aiming to tell their stories. Can you give us like three big tips on how a small business, somebody with an iPhone and a microphone and a and a tripod can aim to tell their story of their business or what they do or how they do it?
I think for me, the first thing I would say is that it's classic. Like, imagine if your friend came and met you and started blowing their own trumpet and was telling you about how great they are. Immediately, you'd feel on the defense and feel like, oh, you're bragging a little bit here. But actually, if you heard that you're somebody else that was a third party to say, hey, you've got to meet Joe Blogs. They're so good at this because of X, Y, Z. You'd kind of be more willing to believe that because it's a recommendation. So personally, what I've encouraged my clients to do is, rather than standing in front of a camera and presenting their ideas, is actually, how about we hear it from your customers? So if you truly believe that what you offer is a great service or your products are fantastic, well then prove it, and let's hear from the customers that you've dealt with that are able to recommend you. When it comes to the actual practical side of filmmaking or video production, there's a lot of aspects that are involved but often get ignored. So one of them is quite often sound design or sound recording. And it's for some reason it's always left to the last. It's put right at the bottom of the pile. So like, you could have this amazing looking video, but with terrible sound. It just doesn't really reflect you guys in the best way from a production point of view, because you really want to present yourself as leaders, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it's just making sure that when you are considering video, always speak to the professionals first before you start considering your budgets, because it's quite often I'll be dealing with clients and they will already have allocated their budget and they'll say, this is what we want. And I'll say, well, that's great, but unfortunately we can't achieve that in that budget. Mm-hmm. And then it just creates that awkward moment where you've got to then go back to them and say, well, this is really what you can achieve. But fundamentally, it's just going right back to the basics and thinking, what story do you want to tell here? And see it from your audience's perspective. What do they want to hear? Because it's quite easy to get self-indulgent and say, well, I'm great, but it's trying to step into your audience's shoes for a sec and think what matters to them. Why are they here? Why are they watching this video? And what do they want to get out of it? Okay.
So when it comes to sort of planning out a video, all right, obviously, well, yeah, you're planning out films. How important is script, storyboard? I mean, we're sort of like, in a way, we're kind of blessed and cursed at the same time with things like Facebook Lives, which is quite interesting because you use the phrase self-indulgent when you were giving us the tips there, and it's that sometimes Facebook Lives do come across as quite self-indulgent. It's like, yeah, look at me, whoop whoop, I'm here at this massive event, you're not, you should feel jealous, that type of thing. So when you're planning out these videos, and you're quite right, it should be for the client and the customer, and it's not, not for yourself to promote yourself as such. How important is script and how important is storyboard?
I think it's really important because without a destination, you're just walking in the dark, really, and you don't really know where you're headed. And I think even when you watch a documentary on TV, they will have known what they wanted before they'd even started, and it allows you to work backwards from your destination, so you can figure out what it is that you need to do to get all the relevant content. And so with a concise script, it just means everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet, everybody knows what we're doing. With a storyboard, you can pass that on to people and they can quite clearly see in front of them, this is what it's going to look like. And then it just means logistically you end up spending a lot less time creating the content, because you're just much more time efficient. And when you're on the set, you can just blast through everything and just spend as much time and energy on that one shot, rather than thinking, oh, we'll get 5 shots just in case, which actually might end up being 5 watered down shots that don't really tell the story. Mm-hmm. And I think the best visionaries and directors, they will know exactly what they're looking for before they've even started, and it's just really key that you get that down on paper so everybody can get on board with you. Okay.
One of the things that people talk about, especially when in the world of technology that we're in right now, there are a lot of people out there that just don't do video. They don't get themselves out there enough. They're not sort of sitting themselves in front of their business. How easy, genuinely, how easy is it to get started with video and start promoting yourself or your business?
I think it is quite easy, actually. I mean, obviously, equipment is a lot cheaper these days. Everybody's got an iPhone. Well, not an iPhone. Everyone's got seems to have
Other
a
brands
smartphone.
are available.
Yes, they are available. Yeah, and that's a great starting point. However, what I would say is that although it is very accessible, it is still important that you consider the way that you're being perceived, because an iPhone video or other brands available video it doesn't necessarily say that we're a big company and we've invested a lot in our advertising, which subliminally says a lot. But if you're trying to create content that is a bit of a behind the scenes and giving your customers an insight into what you're like as a business, and actually shooting things on phones and doing smaller scale things like that is quite good, because it's got an element of realness to it. And rawness, so that if you've shot something and it was high production value and you said this is genuinely what we're like behind the scenes, people might not believe it so much. So lots of people can get access to it, and there's a wealth of producers out there now and camera operators. It's crazy. I mean, that's something I'm battling with at the moment, is that if someone who's now got a camera is now a camera operator. I'm a director now because I own a camera. So there's lots of people out there shooting great content. But it's just always key, I suppose, just to be careful as to who you're working with, do your research, and again, just bring it back to your brand and make sure that it fits with what you're trying to deliver.
I think you just raised a really important point there, is that everybody with a phone is really a camera operator, a stroke director. I mean, I would probably go one stage further. And you're now probably sat in a very big prime position. Chris Ducker talks about it a lot, where actually that every business owner or every business is in effect their own media company, because they can choose when to put stuff out, what to put out, and how they put it out at any time of day, which probably is one of the first times in our lifetime that we can do that. We can now run campaigns or marketing campaigns, ad campaigns, without ever having to contact a TV company, which is quite weird, really, isn't it?
It's weird, but it's great, because it just means that we were in control. And back in the day, I suppose producing a TV campaign was the best way with video to get out there. But you were reliant on huge budgets, and it was only accessible to some, whereas actually so many businesses now can just upload content. Everybody's a broadcaster. But equally, it's the fact that it's so fast paced, and it's just being rushed out the door. I see that a lot of businesses have this tick box with video, and as long as it's ticked, they're doing their job. But actually, it's not just a tick box. We do need to put a lot of thought into it and make sure that what's being broadcast is on point. But it's a great age to be in. I mean, for me as well, as a filmmaker and a video producer, it's just everybody wants it, so it's a win-win situation.
Absolutely. So come on then, let's talk a little bit more about your story. How mad has the last few weeks been? What's been the highlight? What's been the low? Because everybody's probably asked you the highlight. I'm also going to ask you what the low light has been as well, but we'll go with the highlights first. So, how's it been the last few weeks? Life must have been, mad, really.
It really has. It was Friday last week, so what was that? A week ago, and it was when I was on Good Morning Britain. I didn't actually know I was going to be on Good Morning Britain, and my partner's dad called me and said, just to let you know, they've just shown your film. And then within 10 minutes, I had a call from the producer saying, do you want to come on for a Skype video chat live on air? So I was like, obviously, that's amazing. Yeah. But that day was when all of the press started to call. I had so many voicemails from people who wanted to speak with me, and so many emails coming in, that it was quite hard to keep track of, actually. And normally what I'm used to with my calendar is I've got one event for that whole day. I just put an all-day event and that's what I'm doing. But now, as with many people I'm sure can relate to this, I've literally got slots per half an hour of just stuff that I've got to do. And then the messages on Facebook started to flood in as well, and I've still got a backlog of messages that I'm trying to go through, because I want to speak with these people directly, because they're not just saying, hey, cheers for the video. They're pouring their heart out and saying how much it's affected them. and that they've recently lost loved ones, and they wanted to just say it's helped them, or it's just given them the reminder that they needed, that although they're suffering great pain, they've got so much around them now that they can feel grateful for. And I feel honoured and privileged to be the guy that caused that. So that's why I do really want to spend as much time possible responding to these people. But yeah, it's
has that surprised you? Has that surprised you, the amount of outpouring from people, effectively just about, just from a video of a story that came to you whilst you were out running?
It does. When I first edited it and I watched it back, I did well up actually myself, and that's when I realised this could work. But because I created it, there will always be an element of separation from that feeling that you would get as an audience member having no idea of this beforehand. So that I can never truly understand what people have felt when they watched it. So that's why I guess I feel like it's almost it's alien to me. It feels like it's bizarre, but I was genuinely shocked. However, I do. It's made me believe in myself a lot more, and believe that the strength in my storytelling is there. And if I can just continue that, it would be great for me, because I just love telling stories.
What if you could go back in time, go back to 4 years ago when you first filmed it? Is there anything you would change about it?
Initially,
and part of me is wondering whether you've been asked that this week, so I'm just going to go with
it's the first time I've been asked. Actually, it's a really good question, and it reminded me. So when I first released it, as in re-released it this year, and it started to get views, I was thinking, oh no, this doesn't represent who I am now as a filmmaker in terms of the production value, because I've got better kit now. I'm a better cinematographer, and I'm a better director. And this is something I created a long time ago. But the more I started to think about it, the more I realized, no, I think the charm comes from the fact that it is low budget, and it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that come with like the John Lewis advert, for example. And it's just a stripped down video or film that just has a core great story. And so I don't think I would go back and change it now. And I certainly couldn't feel like that because of the response I've had. It like, if I changed it, well, then perhaps that would change people's perception of it.
See, it's quite interesting, is that sort of like, obviously you've meant, it's been re-released, and we talked before I started recording this that I'm doing a podcast series on Doctor Who in business, and people kind of sneer at it, but most people don't realise that Doctor Who was actually launched 3 times. And it's still going 55 years later.
Yeah.
Because its first episode that it filmed was so bad that Sidney Newman turned around to the Verity Lambert and the director and said, no, go back and reshoot it because it's terrible. They then actually put it out, and it was the day after JFK had been shot. So nobody cared. Nobody watched it. The BBC were doing what they should be doing, which was obviously news and covering the JFK shooting. And it wasn't until the following week where Sidney Newman persuaded somebody at the BBC to repeat it before episode 2 that it actually took off. So it kind of shows that content is out there forever, and we've all got memories like fish. This podcast, for instance, I could put it out again in 3 months' time if I wanted to, because people have forgotten that I did it in the first place. So it's really, really interesting. So, what's the lowest point of this past couple of weeks then for you? What's been difficult to cope with?
For me, it's I haven't been able to spend that much time with my family. I've been very, very busy, and we're talking 10 minutes here and there where I can just sit down and have a coffee with my partner. Mm-hmm. And it was yesterday that we just said, should we just drop everything for a sec? Let's just go out and grab a coffee, because we haven't actually had a chance to reflect on everything and just say, wow, what's going on? Because it's just been mad. And so just taking that moment, I think what I'm looking forward to is Christmas, actually, because we're going to be forced to take time off because nobody's going to be working. So to have a week or so where I can just spend time with my family and do nothing but that, I think I'll really need. I'll realise how much I've needed that, and I've just been full on work mode actually for the last week. So I certainly don't see it as a low, but I do feel that it's something that I'm missing and really look forward to having again.
So what does the next 12 months hold? Have you got people banging on the door wanting you to come and do their corporate videos all of a sudden?
I have, yeah. I've had a lot of inquiries, and it's
nice, isn't it?
It's great. Yeah, I mean, a month ago I was thinking, Jesus, how busy am I going to be heading up to Christmas? Yeah, it's great. I've got a wealth of clients. So starting from small local businesses who want to tell emotional stories of their brand, and quite exciting calls with Canadian producers and talking about doing big content. And I'm working with ITV at the moment on a project, and
wow.
It's great. And I think the reason I feel honoured is because, especially in this area, Gloucestershire, which is tucked away, there's a lot of filmmakers and producers who are excellent at what they do, and some of them will never get noticed, and some of them will probably give up. And to be the guy that got noticed, it's a dream come true. I'm not suggesting that I'm ahead of myself and guaranteeing that I'm going to be able to build on this for my career, but this doesn't happen that often.
No, it doesn't. No. It's like lightning in a bottle.
A little bit, yeah. So I just want to embrace that. I keep telling myself how lucky I am, and I'm not getting complacent at all, but I've become a yes man with everything. I'm just taking every single opportunity that's coming to me because I just think I need to embrace that and just see what happens. So I can't predict what the next 12 months holds. I know it's going to be busy. That's a guarantee. But yeah, I still don't know where I'll be in 12 months' time. I hope that I'll be doing another Christmas campaign, whether that be for myself or for a brand of some sort.
Now you see that comes with its own pressure now, doesn't it? Because obviously, people are going to want to see lightning in a bottle twice.
I know it's an album curse thing, isn't it? Bands releasing content. It's a lot.
That dodgy second album. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I am worried about it a little bit, but equally, I'm trying to not. I'm not going to create. The Love is a Gift too. I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to be selling out. I just want to stick to my core values and try and tell a nice story that speaks to me. And I think that's what filmmaking is. It's an art form, and it should be about what comes from within you. And I want my audience to enjoy my content, but I don't think it's right to come in with the idea that you're creating content just for your audience. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's disingenuous. I don't think it will truly reflect myself as a filmmaker. So if I make another Christmas ad or film and people enjoy it, then brilliant. But yeah, we'll see.
I genuinely think that it's an incredible story, and it's as soon as I saw it, and I mentioned before we start recording how I first came across it, is that it just goes to show that storytelling has changed, but storytelling will never die. It can happen in so many different forms. It can happen audio-wise. It can happen. You can read it in a book, read it in a newspaper, read it on an iPad. Other pads are available. That type of stuff. But a good story, well told, will never die, and will always just be timeless. I mean, looking at the film. Yes, it's got a Walkman in it, and it brought back some fantastic memories for me for the 80s. But actually, do you know what? That could be used again in another 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time, because the story is so powerful.
Yeah, and I think actually, because there's so many big budget productions out there now, films, that people are a little bit immune, I guess, to all that, all the bells and whistles, as I describe it. So because like back when 3D came out, it was a novelty, and people were rushing to the cinema to see 3D because it was cool. But now that we're all immune to that, it's the stories that are shining through. And I think it's the last 20 years since the 90s when you got the cheesy action. I was thinking Batman, Robin, cheesy films, which are great films, but there was a bit of silliness there. Whereas from the noughties onwards, I think it really became very serious. Like even again relating to Batman, when Christopher Nolan jumped on board, the way that he told that story, and rather than it being Batman, who is this epic superhero, he went right in under the surface of it all and told the real in inverted commas story about just a bloke who had his struggles and fought to the top. And although it's not necessarily it's not real, but I like the fact that it became much more gritty and about the story and characters within there. I think it's a very challenging time for people to tell stories because there's just so much content out there.
Do you think, I mean, this is a side, and it could be very personal, and I've got my view on it, so to back you up, I'll probably give you my view on it as well. Do you think actually one of the reasons that your film has taken off is because for the very first time in a long time, the John Lewis advert wasn't really a John Lewis advert? Because I'll explain that in the fact that it came out and it's a story in a very odd way, but part of me was sat there thinking, your movie's out next year, Rocket Man. Why are you doing this? Yeah. Because I suddenly got to the end of the advert and I suddenly thought, well, unless you've got a £1,000 piano in any of your stores, what has that actually been about? Does that make sense? It was kind of like the first story that I was about to say sold on, but bought into. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think the fact that it was Elton John, I guess it felt like perhaps you were spoon feeding an audience by saying this guy is an epic performer and has done so well. Whereas it's really funny because when it first came out, not long before that, I'd been in discussion with somebody about creating a similar story, which was that it was going to feature a ballerina. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the film, it was going to be a scene where a little girl was going to open a present and it was going to be ballet shoes. Mm-hmm. But the difference is that it was a normal person who went on, although I was going to potentially have a scene of them up on stage, they're still in the public's eye a nobody, but a nobody that we can all relate to because it feels accessible. Mm-hmm. And so, whereas with someone like Elton John, although his career is incredible and what he's achieved is amazing, it's like he's separate to, you've got us as regular people, inverted commas, and then you've got celebrities and they're like in a different world and we're sort of looking at them from a distance. And so I think it was always going to be challenging for John Lewis to be able to tell a story about Elton John and for us to really relate to him as just a normal bloke. But I do think under all of that, the story that they were trying to tell was a good story. I always refer back to the first John Lewis advert they ever created, which is the one where the boy was counting down the days to Christmas. And you were led to believe he was looking forward to it for himself, but then he gave a gift back to his parents. They're just normal people. Yeah. Like, none of them were actors that we recognised, but they had a story that we could all relate to and giving a gift. And it was really effective. And I think maybe off the back of this, I don't know what their next steps will be, but it's just getting to the core of just having a story that we can relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are lots of other people that are now starting to copy it. You know, there's even the I have shared it on Facebook as well, by the way. There is you going back to that where they're opening presents and it looks like a normal family, and it does look and feel like a John Lewis advert. And then somebody hands over an envelope to this old fella that's sat next to the Christmas tree, and he opens it up and he gets a hug off his grandson or his nephew or whoever. And then the camera pans around to the back of him and he's got a Pornhub gift card. And it just made me laugh out loud because you don't see it coming right until the end. And there he is. He's just got in between his two fingers a Pornhub gift card.
I think I've seen that actually.
It's very funny. It's very, very funny. I just thought, Wow. That's how creative you can be with stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Phil, thank you so much for the chat. If people want to find out more about you, where can they find you, my friend?
I think the best first steps, if you go to philbeastall.co.uk, there's a bunch of work on there, a bit of information about me. And you can contact me on there if you need.
Phil, I genuinely thank you so much for the time that you've given me. I know it's been absolutely chaotic for the last couple of weeks, but it's really, really appreciated. Thank you, my friend.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
And that's it for this podcast. Wow. What a thoroughly nice chat. But you know what? He's got his head screwed on. So much has happened to the guy in the last few weeks. But some great tips and ideas and thoughts in there. Especially about what your customers want to see. What your customers are looking for. That one really stuck out to me. Look, if you want to go and find out more about Phil, the links are in the show notes. If you want to go and find out more about what I do, go and have a look on my website, which is www.markford.uk. That's www.markford.uk. I'm your best kept business secret, telling you all the secrets of the successful businesses that they don't want you to know. Until next time, be good, be brilliant, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
This podcast is sponsored by JB Commercial Finance, the trusted funding solutions for business. JB Commercial Finance are experienced, whole-of-market commercial finance brokers and will help you and your business raise money no matter your circumstances. Whether you're investing in your business, have cash flow challenges, or you're looking to acquire commercial premises, get in touch with us now for independent, expert, and honest advice. For a free, no-obligation assessment, find us at www.jbcommercialfinance.co.uk or call 0116-3440-322. JB Commercial Finance is fully authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority and are proud members of the National Association of Commercial Finance Brokers.